any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jim right here.
Thank you, Dave. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here today. It's nice to see friends. I haven't been in Chico since 2015, so it's nice to see old friends, friends that I've worked with that have helped me with the project. It's been, it's very satisfying to be back here at the conclusion of this project, I guess you'd say. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the Chico Police Department, how this book came to be, some of the serendipitous moments that allowed it to come to pass. And what's really interesting is this is a story that was, it seems, impatiently waiting to be told. The reason that I say that is so many things happened. I call it my just so happened moments. It just so happens that I'm at the right place at the right time to find out some new information that I didn't have before. It just so happens that I walked into our training officer Carolyn's office to ask for the book or the box that I'd maybe misplaced / lost, and she said, "Oh, you're here for those books that they brought in." What are you talking about? Oh, there's just, by the way, old giant books that were the Bolo books from the early 1900s. Oh, of course. So this started as a chance on graveyard shift.
They say they can't quite hear in the back.
Well, they should scoot up.
So
Thank you. All right, no, welcome. So anyway, this was a chance on graveyard shift. I started digging and poking around and finding some things that were interesting to me. I really like genealogy. It's a fascinating thing. And all of a sudden, all of these articles started coming out. And I thought, I'm going to put together a little pamphlet for briefing for my officers, kind of to inspire them, give them a sense of home, really. And then Chief O'Brien was brought in. He was appointed as chief. And the question came up, what number am I? What do you mean? Well, what chief number am I? No idea. So, one of those just so happens moments is right about that time, we stumbled across some documents from 1872 when Chico first started. And let me tell you a story that's heartbreaking for every historian in this room. It just so happens that I took a call at the Catholic Church. And it just so happens I happened to see a guy there that I knew that worked for the city, and he told me a story. When they cleared out the old 1911 building that's now our substation, they took 4 truckloads full of materials from it, from the basement. And it was supposed to go over to the storage building behind the police department. Well, this gentleman pulled up with his truckload and asked the other gentleman, "Where's the other 3? Oh, we took them to the dump. Dear land, I hope I never find that man. Right? But of the information that was preserved, it was the original 1872 Marshal's documents. There's the fire department trying to upstage the police again. That's the way it works. It just so happens that it was the original handwritten documents to the city council about their arrests, about the taxes that they gathered, etc., and several documents that are still there. If we wouldn't have had that, we would never have known how many marshals there, or police chiefs there would have been. That's why I say it was a story that was anxiously waiting to be told. All right. So I'm going to show you this picture here. This picture used to hang on this wall in 2010 or whenever, and there was a sign that said, "Don't take a picture of this." I kind of took a picture of it. So, if you notice this gentleman here, if this is who I think it is, this will be the earliest picture of a Chico Marshal that I've seen to date. And that would be Henry Clay Mansfield. He was a big fella. There was articles about him being of big size and about the criminals hoping that he would have gotten elected as marshal so they could get away from him. They used to write differently in the olden days. And so, my dad was a newspaper man, Jim Dimmitt. He was at the Enterprise Record for years as the general manager. And so I understand the concept of needing to get the story and needing to get the story right. I understand there's a big balance. So when we read these stories, it's never the full truth. Even now, when you read a story, you're getting about this much of all of the things and perspectives that have happened over the years. So this picture Randy brought in. Randy, where are you at? Colin, you found this picture, right, or brought it in? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about that real quick. Not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot.
Just downstairs in the basement, and I've never seen it before, and I don't know exactly where it came from, but I'm sure glad it did.
So Randy was down here in the basement, and I've been down there. There's lots of different amazing things downstairs. You really should go sometime if you can sneak down there. Can't sneak down there. So he found this picture, and this is an old picture. Let's see if we can zoom in. The gentlemen are wearing a white piece of paper on their shirt. Does anybody know why they would do something like that? I really don't. Any thoughts? I'll be reaching out to you throughout this presentation because there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And I know that there's a lot of historians that know a lot of stuff, so I'll be asking you plenty of questions. One of the first people that I met when I came here began this project was Michelle Shover. You familiar with Michelle? Yeah. I did a cold call at her house. She lives in the old Chapman house in Chapmantown. And I like cold knocking doors and surprising people. I've gotten some great reactions. And she was awesome. Both she and I have become friends of Benjamin True. So you understand the beginning of Chico started because of transiency, the crimes associated with transiency. It was so bad at the time that either they were going to incorporate, or they were going to have city vigilant groups. What that is vigilantes. So they were a little different. There's stories of lynchings, of crowds grabbing people out of the jail, running the jail, and lynching somebody that had killed an old man. I mean, we were a different time. We were sort of different socially. What was socially acceptable was very different back then. So they incorporated, and the very first marshal was James O. Weed. Neat name. Neat guy. And he was elected. The policemen, that was what they were called then, were elected as well. The very first one was Benjamin Flagg True. And also, I think it was W.A. Taylor. Well, Ben True lasted 3 months before he was dismissed. Right? So the first police officer and the first fired police officer. The second officer lasted about 4 months, and then the one after that 3 months, and then tough job to keep.
There was only one at a time?
They had 2 at a time at that time. So W.O. Taylor lasted for about a year. But his partner, he changed partners a lot. Yeah. So I don't know what Benjamin did. Really don't know. But what I do know was that he was an amazing person. Soon after, he became the constable over one of the Chinatowns. Sneaking up on me. One of the Chinatowns. How many Chinatowns were in Chico? Do you know?
3 total.
3 total. Yeah, I learned 3 just the other day. I thought it was 2. Right? One on Orient, one up on 10th. Orange, thank you. And where was the third one? I don't know, but Humboldt. Okay. Good point. All right. So he became the constable. He actually learned Chinese. They called him Ah Ben, which is a sign of honor and respect. He was a neat guy, tall. Michelle described him as being 6'1". The average height back then was 2 inches shorter. So you can imagine a fellow that's 6'1". I'm 6'1" with my boots on. And most people were 2 inches shorter than this. And he was 1 inch taller than this, I guess. About. Now, he would actually help the Chinese individuals gain a fair contract with their bosses, make sure that they didn't get taken advantage of. One of the early horrible things that happened, and that proves that there's nothing really new under the sun, is that there was a murder about 2 miles east of Chico at the Lem Ranch. And supposedly these Oriental workers had money of some kind, these folks thought. They came and they bushwhacked them as they slept. They murdered them. One of them got away, and he went to the Lem Ranch and asked for help. Mr. Lem said, it's nighttime and there's people with guns killing people. I'm not going to go. So he didn't go. The man, though he was shot in the arm, went into Chico to the other Chinatown and found Ben True. Ben True was the first lawman to go out. And beyond that, where nobody would do this, he took a flatbed wagon, placed the bodies on the wagon, rode all the way into town and down, I believe, Main Street to the mortuary. And it was sort of a shame to the community that nobody would help. But here this man would help. It tells you the kind of person he was. He was a Presbyterian. He had a deep voice, sung bass in the choir. He helped to get the organ into the Presbyterian church. Here's a neat thing about him is Michelle had never seen a picture. I had never seen a picture. No pictures of Ben True. He ended up helping Governor Stanford with some cattle rustling issues, and after he had been marshaled, he got picked up as a Southern Pacific Railroad policeman. And there's many stories about him catching train, abductors. I guess how do you steal a train? But some guy wanted to see if he could drive a train, and he did, and so Ben caught him. And different train wrecking, because that was a very popular pastime, wrecking trains. So, one of the interesting things is that when I left Chico Police and moved to Sacramento, I was doing training. I rode my bicycle everywhere. And I had gone to the CHP for training. And I'd already been to the Railroad Museum, and they told me they didn't have anything. I said, hey, here's the story of this guy that was a railroad policeman in the 1800s, yada, yada, yada. Got nothing. Well, as I'm pedaling through the Badlands of Sacramento, I think, I'm going to stop by. I go upstairs, I find the clerk, and I say, hey, any chance? No. Can you just look? Okay. She brings out a manila folder, and on the very top is this picture. Okay, does anybody stand out in that picture as being perhaps taller than the rest?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look here. All right, let's look at the feet. At least he's wearing his long johns, or he's really white. I don't know. And look at how much taller. So I can't say for 1,000%, but I believe this is the first picture that we found of Benjamin True. It just so happens. Oh, that's a picture of my first grandbaby. I don't know how that got in there. All right, let's do some trivia. We're going to see by raise of hands what you think. Ready? In 1900, the cost of running the police department was this much. $25,600, $9,600, or $14,600. Who says A?
B.
Who says B?
I think those are that B.
Who says C? Billy, Chief Aldridge, sorry. We've worked together forever. How much does it cost to run the PD now? About?
32 million.
About 32 million.
At any given time during that period, how many police officers would there be?
That's a good question. At first there were 2. Later they shifted one to a 12-hour shift at the daytime, and then one 12-hour shift at the nighttime. And during the fair they could hire special police, and we actually have a special police badge over here. Y'all can take a gander a little later. But that special police badge was what they would hire, just John Q. Citizen to be an extra police force. Yeah, so not many at all. So the marshal got $2,100 a year, and the police officers amongst them got $7,200.
That's pretty good wage.
Pretty decent, yeah. Yeah. Those numbers don't add up, so that means there's like $300 to run the rest of the junk, right? All right. So these are some of the early police officers. Up at the top right is Tom Fleck. In the middle is William White, and we'll talk about him in a second. Then we have Samuel David Fisher. His daughter was the one that gave a lot of these pictures to Chico State, and I believe to maybe Nopal and then to Chico State, perhaps. Ed Martin, who unfortunately committed suicide later on in his life.
Which one's Ed Martin?
Ed Martin's the bottom right with the sweet stash. Well, they have many sweet stashes, but the really dark black stash right here. He was drunk because he lost the marshal's election and took his life. And the city council fired Samuel David Fisher and also A.J. Light. A.J. Light took it well, Fisher, not so well. He stormed out, and they called it a swan song. He stormed out and said, I know things, and I know about counselors and what they've done, and then ran out. So, anyway. And then Chief Go down in the middle, Moses Hill Go, who unfortunately committed suicide too. A lot of that. It's because his niece later in life accused him of stealing $1, of defrauding her of $1, and took him to court. And he says, I'm not going to live like this. And so he took morphine and died. All right. So let's talk about this gentleman here. Whoops. Get the little red pointer thingy. And we're going to solve a mystery, maybe. There's an open mystery. Somebody shot him once. Didn't kill him, but they shot him in the leg. He got called down to the Diamond Match train station, and when he went down there, he saw a fella. Now we're going to call him a suspect. The subject shot him in the leg and took off running. He fired several rounds back but missed, and the guy got away. So the citizens carried him. They responded to the row, and they carried him to the hospital. What's interesting is back then the citizenry was different. I've been through the death of 3 of my friends in law enforcement, and there's outrage. But when it happened then, there were posses. People would literally surround the police department, and they wanted to make sure that justice was done. The whole community, it affected the whole community, which is just different. So a few days later, there was a note found up in the Pleasant Valley, up there by PV, right? 1 mile. And it was nailed to a tree, and it said, this is the direction that I took after I killed a Chico policeman. JRP. Nobody knows who that is. So, plant that seed in your mind when you're looking at old records. And if we find any more of these booking books, JRP. Let's see if we can figure out who this was, and then we'll come back and do this next year. Interestingly enough, this gentleman is Arthur Light. Anybody here related to Arthur Light? He was an interesting fella. Is it okay if I talk about that? Sure. Yeah? He had a brothel called the Lighthouse. It was kind of one of those things everybody knew about and nobody talked about. Until a lady got on the city council and she talked a lot about it. She must have been a real pain because she just ruined everybody's fun, I guess. But I'm going to show you a couple of pictures here. These are early marshals. This is James Chubbuck. Every time I drive up to see my kids in Idaho, I drive through Chubbuck, and I always wonder if that's Chubbuck. This would be the second earliest picture we have of a marshal. James Chubbuck served from 1898 to 1903.
Is the marshal the chief?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. And if you have questions, throw them up here. You know, the marshal, they're called marshals, and they had ex officio positions. By nature of his call, he was the chief of police, he was the tax collector, and he was the road grader. He was in charge of maintaining the roads. Wow. Yeah, isn't that weird? And the police officers, they actually got a raise because they took over lighting and turning out or snuffing the city lamp posts. Yeah. I found a great letter where the chief of police says, come on guys, turn off your business lights at night. My policemen are stretched. They can't keep turning off your lights as they're doing their foot beat. So they had just all sorts of crazy responsibilities that certainly we couldn't do now. Yeah. Down here, that's Go. He's got a sweet mustache, and he had a cool dog. We're going to talk about his dog. This is Tovey, C.E. Tovey. He was actually the fire chief and the police chief because of some troubles that were happened. And the funny story is that he used to supposedly get drunk and go up to his cabin, or he'd get drunk at his cabin and beat meadows and shoot holes in the ceiling. So, everybody needs a hobby, right? Over here, this is Teddy Peck. Teddy Peck is a cool guy. He's got some stories. He would ride on the bicycle out to the train tracks and deal with all sorts of problems. He'd chase people all over the country. He went back to the east and caught a guy that had absconded from Chico. And on the train, he fell asleep. He tied a gold little chain around his wrist and tied it to the other guy's wrist, and he fell asleep. Shockingly, the guy got away. But he later caught him in Oregon and brought him to justice. And what's so funny, it was like a small check amount. I mean, he's really spent a lot of money. And he had, I think, spent his own money. But it was pride. You didn't let somebody get away. Ain't right. So we're going to talk about some interesting laws in Chico. Crack open the book. I got the tabs. First one, killing birds. Are you ready? It shall be unlawful in the city to entrap, kill, and destroy any birds except English sparrows or blue jays. They're dead. I don't know. They're not pretty or something. I really don't know. Disturbing the peace. It shall be unlawful for any person in the city to make, in any place, or suffer to be made upon his premise or premises within his control, any noise, disorder, or tumult to the disturbance of public peace by yelling, whooping, or singing in a boisterous, rude, or obscene manner. I know the current chief of police would be guilty of that. Just so you know, I've known him forever, and so I'm going to be giving him lots of guff throughout. All right, let's see here. Expectoration, spitting. It should be unlawful for any person to expectorate, throw gum, portions of cigars and cigarettes, pieces of apples or oranges, bananas, or other fruits of similar substance on the floor. Very specific. No banana peelings. It shall be unlawful for any person in the city to utter within the hearing of 2 or more persons any bawdy, lewd, or obscene, profane language, words, or epithets, which is easy to say. No cussing. You're looking at your phone. All right. Physical therapy. I don't know what brought this law about.
I do.
Oh, you do?
I can imagine.
Oh, we're going to have to talk after this.
Because the brothel you talked about was not the only one around.
No, no. When I was a deputy sheriff before, and I talked to this old fella, great guy, who had been a deputy, and he said when he was hired, he went downstairs to the sheriff's office, they tossed him, he said, you're a nice guy, tossed him keys and a gun, and gave him a list of people not to mess with, and don't ever mess with the sheriff's brothel. Someday I want to write a book about the sheriff's department. It's going to be a little different. It shall be unlawful for any person to administer for hire or award to any person of the opposite sex physical therapy as defined in this code. Don't be doing that. I'm going to hit a couple more here. Directing traffic. No person other than an officer of the police department or a person deputized by the chief of police, what a weird term, deputized, or person authorized by law shall direct or attempt to direct traffic. Okay. Tells the hours. You can't have your shooting gallery between 12 p.m. and daylight. So I guess that's a morning time activity, is that right? No person afflicted with any contagious or infectious disease or bearing any open cut or skin infection shall enter the waters of any creek or bathing area of any park of the city.
Might be violating that now.
Yeah, I think these might be still in effect. Yeah, they may, I don't know. And this one, and I don't know why, is my personal favorite. No person shall ride or drive any animal through any street, lane, alley of the town faster than a rate of 6 miles per hour. How do you tell? Come on.
I don't know why, they all have words.
All right. I don't remember. I can't find that one, but you can't use a police whistle. You know, don't be, unless you got a police issue and you're a police officer, no police whistles. So, this is the posse, the Chico police posse riding during the parade. I think it's around 1911-12. And you see Marshall go in the middle there. Oh, and others. Isn't that great? Sometimes when we'd be shutting down parties that were way out of control downtown, you'd hear, and you think, what the heck? Are we in the 1800s? And here comes the Chico police horses. Jim rode one. We've done many things together, riots and whatnot. And I even got punched in the face by a horse once. True story. Picture of it back there. We were going in to clear out a partner and it threw its head to the left and punched me right in my face. Oh, it hurt. Oh, it hurt. All right, more trivia. Ready? Early Chico was a hotbed of gang wars originating from this country. Uganda? Denmark? Or China? Who says A? I think it's pretty obvious, right? It's kind of like all behind me, right back here. Yeah. There were Tong wars. There were gang wars from China that were directed from China. There were assassinations, there were poisonings, you name it. At certain times, the police would have to mount up with their rifles and shotguns because they were afraid of an outbreak of Tong wars. Just different. And you wouldn't think about that, but this is in the early 1900s, late 1800s that this went on.
They were directed from China, did you say?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It just so happens. I love this story. So there I was in Rayleigh's on East Avenue. I have 4 kids. One of them needed to go to the bathroom. Okay, so we go to the back of the store. He goes in the restroom, and I'm standing there, bored, looking around, and they had pictures on the wall. Old Chico pictures in the hallway. And I kind of looked at one, looked around, recognized who that was. This guy right here. It just clicked. It's Charles McEldowney. Look at the face. It's him. Isn't it funny how the subconscious works? I've been putting all these stuff into the subconscious and then bang, there's Charles. All right, I need somebody else to read for me. Who wants to read? Who has a good voice? Who was a dispatcher once? Who wants to read? Come on. All right. Ms. Parrott, come on up here. This is a bit of a long story. Bear with. All right. I don't want my voice to be too annoying, so I'm going to pass it along. I'm going to stand near you so the mic can catch.
Okay.
It's this story.
Starting with the highlight?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna have to take the glasses off. January 1st, silence reigns at Old Hall, police mascot homeless. Silence reigned in the old town hall yesterday. It was the beginning of the end for old 1872, for it is said that before long, a modern new building is to take its place. The last of anything of value was taken from the building yesterday afternoon by a force of men in the employ of the street department. The movers left debris and upheaval in their wake, and those who inspected what was left agreed that it was a good job of house cleaning. Carpets, desks, chairs, books, chests, trunks, benches, everything in sight that belonged to the city was carted away. The benches are to be overhauled and placed in the city park for the convenience of the people. A cat with 2 kittens, snuggled under the stove in the jail, slept in peaceful slumber. They were the prisoners' pets, but did not follow their masters to the new jail. While the police force and city officials were glad to get into their commodious new quarters, there was one adjunct to the city administration who was extremely displeased at the move and did not for one moment hesitate in showing his displeasure. It was Pete the Pup, fox terrier mascot of the police force and the best known canine in town. Peter is 4 years old, and the greater part of his life had been spent in old 1872. His favorite position, when not on the streets greeting his doggy friends, was at the soft spot on the couch at the marshal's office. His right to the place was recognized by the police and all who had occasion to frequent the office, and was never disputed, save by Spot, a small fox terrier belonging to Colonel Lon Bond. Keep going.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay. Spot once came into the office and had the temerity to usurp Pete's chosen place. There was a fight. At its end, Spot crawled into a far corner of the room, and Pete was again in his favorite position. All day Tuesday, Pete knew something was wrong. The marshal's office was bustle and confusion. A drayman came in and took away the safe. Pete watched the task of moving the furniture jealously. A calamity was impending for him, but he knew not what. His couch was moved away, and he did not know what to make of it. Tuesday night, when the moving was completed and the marshal was prepared to turn the key of the door of the old office, he called to Pete, who had refused to budge for more than a few minutes at a time during the entire moving operations. Pete refused to obey. He did not want to go. He whined of disapproval. It was finally necessary to take him by force from the room. He was inveigled to the new city hall. He demurred at the door and did not want to enter. He was finally lifted into the new office of the marshal. He looked around the room for a moment. Everything was clear. His couch was not there. The old stove, before which he had warmed himself on occasions ever since he was a puppy, was also missing. Everything was new and strange, and Pete did not like the place. He expressed his disapproval in whines. "Oof," he growled as he began to scratch at the door. Sergeant Sam Fisher finally opened it, and Pete ran hastily to the street. Some hours later, Officer George Palmer found the dog at the old hall in front of the marshal's office, attempting to open the door by a clever manipulation of his paw, which had always been effective in his past experience. Upon the officer's approach, he asked with his eyes to be admitted to his old home. He could not be persuaded to leave and stayed in the hallway for hours. Later, he wandered about the streets, a dog in his own mind, without a home. He had continued to wander disconsolately and ignores all the seductive efforts of the police to bring him to the new hall. For him, a calamity has happened.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What a wonderful voice she has. Years of practice dispatching. Somebody asked me once why I didn't just write it from my own point of view. I can't write like that. I love the words. I love the way that people spoke. They use words like clue, C-L-E-W. What a funny word. You know, they use inveigled. I don't use inveigled. You know?
So whatever happened to Pete?
Pete got run over. True story. Yeah, he did. It's in a couple pages later. Sorry. Yeah, he was disconsolate. That was his home, right? But what a sweet dog. Poor Pete. But isn't it funny that the marshal, everywhere he went, he had this dog. And that was just, you got to get a dog, Billy. This is Marshal Peck. This is sitting in this is where we write reports in the substation, unless you've changed it since then. And that safe is actually in the storage. You see that little safe in the background? If I can get it to make the red dot right back here. So there's a hole in the wall that they covered over. Who's my car people? Who likes cars? My dad judged his life based on the car that he had. That was the way that it was. Who can tell me? This is the earliest car that we have. Who knows what that is?
49.
That's awesome. That's awesome that people know that stuff. That was my dad and my brother's thing. I never got it. Look at this right here. This guy in 1950 50-something, just got arrested for armed robbery. In the front seat. I just throw him up front, he'll be fine. I don't know why he didn't run, but what about that? Is that a Dodge?
Mopar, one way or the other.
Very cool. Yeah, that's Chief Jim Evans. He was probably, besides C.E. Tovey at that time, in those times, he was probably the best chief. He lasted a long time and did a lot of good for the city. And then, whatever that fascinating 1970s ugly-looking car was. Dodge Coronet? Yep. Were you around when they had those?
I was alive, but I wasn't working. Dimmitt.
She was the last dispatcher to send me off when I gave my final farewell. All right. Some Harleys. Do you know who this is, Jim?
It's in the hallway.
Yeah, I've seen it about 1 million times. Huh?
No, Evans is the other one.
This is Evans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who that other guy is, but this is the Harley-Davidson Survey car. That was a tricycle that they would use to go around, write tickets, throw stuff in the trunk. You see the cool leather bra on the front? Very sexy, very sexy.
That's a lot of snow. Wow.
Yep, that's Jim Evans. What kind of car is this? I wish I could figure out what was on the door, but can't. Anyway, and here's that. What is that? That's right downtown at the main square. Oh, does it? This was 1936 is when this picture was taken. I don't know. I went down to the model store in Sacramento. I was trying to find a similar set of cars to redo them. Very tough. Where is this? Who knows where this is? This was a fire sale. Mm-hmm. And who do we got down there directing traffic? Dun, da, da, da. Our boys in, not blue, our boys in whatever they are. All right.
Was it really a fire sale?
Yeah. Yeah. Smoke damage and everything for cheap. Boy, they did a run on that place, didn't they? Look at the town. I kind of think maybe there wasn't great television at the time, so maybe they just ran and something burned down. All right, let's go see. It's Jim Evans. Look at this. Look at this. I love this person in the background. Look at the guy in the window. Early day photo bombs. Yeah. Yeah. And it probably is like the city manager or something. Yeah. Yeah.
What year was that?
That was mid-50s, I think. Yeah. Yeah. I found this picture in Building 400 and I loved it. We dug through so much junk. I had Chico State kids helping out. And it was really fun. They had to dig through and get dusty and cough, and it was nasty, but we found some good pictures. I think this one we found. Some more. Later 50s, still Chief Evans. And trivia time. You ready? All right. Downtown Chico was once home to this type of entertainment. Shooting gallery, buggy racing, or fish lobbing.
All three?
I think it's C, fish lobbing? I made up fish lobbing yesterday. It's where you lob fishes.
No, there was something about fishing in your book.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense that it's on the books.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, in 1878, downtown, like right over here, right on like 3rd Street, we had a shooting gallery.
Well, that still happens.
Did you hear that from that cynical dispatcher? There still happens down there. Terrible. All right, this is Chief Tovey, right down there in the center, in his fire uniform, I think. Yeah, different badge, different uniform. All right, I'm going to talk about some of these folks. I wish Merrifield was here. This gentleman right here, Howard Geyer. That's his father-in-law.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he brought me a couple cool pictures. We're going to talk about this gentleman here in a little bit. He's one of the coolest officers I've heard of. Yep. You got it. Did he ever hook you up?
Huh?
Did he ever arrest you?
No, but I knew the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, just kind of showing you some older pictures, and this was the jail. What's there now?
Chico Heritage was there for a while.
Are they not there anymore?
No, that's the IT office now.
Oh, it's the IT office? It's cool because they actually utilized this stuff right here. It's still there. Pretty smart.
And then blood on the floor.
They clean that up. One thing I want to talk about, and I don't have a picture here unfortunately, but I want to talk about the first and only so far Chico police officer that was killed in the line of duty. In 1938, there was a man named Carleton Bruce. He was a police officer. Young guy, grew up here, went to Chico State or Chico Normal School, whatever they called it at the time, and was a good officer. A lot of good stories about who he was. And a man named Elmer Schrudem came into Joe's Tamale Bar. That's over on where the used bookstore is, over on Main Street. They got a call saying, there's a problem down at Joe's Tamale Bar, come on over. Okay. They go down, they walk in, and Elmer Schrudem was looking for the big man, whoever that was. Might have been Ponciano, the owner, might not have been. He was mad. He had marijuana in his system, however they spelled it, like Juana instead of marijuana, right? And alcohol. And he had sawed off the handle of his 30-30 and had his thumb on the trigger, and his thumb on the hammer and his finger on the trigger, so as soon as the officer walked in, boom, he shot him and he died. So, he was the first officer. Tom Jones, his backup, ended up fighting with this guy, drag him, had to pistol whip him a couple of times. That was a thing. And they drug him over to that big old police car and took him downtown. Now, Schrudem ended up, this was when everybody from town surrounded the jail. Schrudem hung himself in the jail. Supposedly, right? I don't know, I wasn't there. The doctor says no, other people say, I talked to a gentleman who was a little boy when that happened, and he said that his dad went down with everybody else. They saw a commotion and he went down, and he went in and talked to him, and he kind of got the thought that maybe the supposedly part was also the truth. I don't know. People hang themselves in their jail cells. I had a friend that did it. You know, it's just, that happens even today. So I don't know which side of the story is true. All I know is that everybody was mad. The town would have had him if they would have got a hold of him. Actually, a few years before, there was a CHP officer shot on Mangrove, shot and killed. And it was the very first, oh yay. Hi friend. This is Julie.
Hi.
She used to be an explorer at Chico, now she's a police officer in Texas. She came from Texas. Anybody come farther than Texas? Yeah, she got married and has a beautiful little baby boy, and it's kind of cool. I knew she was tough when she took out my SWAT team when we were doing training, so true story. Anyway, what was I talking about? So, we had, CHP officer, right, William R. McDaniel. That was the very first tow truck driver that was ever killed in California. And he's actually, there's a memorial for tow truck drivers that he's on. And this gentleman laid in wait. He crashed his car. He hated the police officers. he had just a couple of months before helped the police officers translate some threats in different languages, because he spoke like, Nick Turkinitz was his name. He spoke like 7 languages, and he was a jeweler. Well, he kills these officers, and then he goes home because he's got a wound. He got shot by, the officer got a shot off, I guess. And his wife runs out and he starts shooting thinking it's the police and almost kills his wife. And then he runs off up into, yet again, Pleasant Valley, right up into 1 Mile. This time they had a posse. They weren't taking that. They were going to go get him. So everybody from town got involved. They went up there and they got a big shootout and ended up shooting him, because he ended up shooting at them from a place of hiding. And I guess, from what I understand, they put him on the front, tied him to the front of the car and drove him into town like that. Different time, right? We don't do that anymore. That's not acceptable. Different times. All right. Last trivia. You ready? How are we doing? We doing okay? We need to stretch? No? True or false? You got 50-50 on this one. 50-50 chance. The Chico Police Department was once taken over by a Chico State professor, a teamster, a purchasing agent, an electrician, and a meat salesman. Who says true?
It's got to be true. That's so bizarre.
What? Who says false? Who doesn't want to say? That's true. In 1953, Jim Evans, as part of a, basically a national, what would you call it? What do you think, Dave?
I don't know, but this was where Chico was going to be the alternative capital for California.
Yeah, it was part of a civil response, something for like bad things happening, explosions or something like that, yeah. And so they had volunteers. You had Oscar Erickson, the Chico Star, Bill Davis, George Benham, Ernest Lout, Captain A.S. Hall. He's this little fella down here. He's in charge of all the volunteers. R.B. Kidder and Carl Evenson. And he was the meat salesman. So, yeah. Isn't that a great picture? That was their 1950s staged photo, you know, the action photo. This is circa 1954, Jim Evans. I have no idea who this is. I found this the other day. And so I put it in here because it's pretty cool. And it looks like it's about the 60s, don't you think? Does anybody know any of the faces in this? I think Geyer's up at the top.
Left-hand side. Third one in is Nick Turner, isn't it?
This fella here?
Yeah.
Don't know. Yeah, I'm down here. Looking old. This guy, I'm going to go back a little bit real quick. You guys know the answer to the trivia. This fella here, Paul Hughes, he went on to become a professional wrestler. Like jumping from the ring and that kind of stuff, right? Now I got to figure out where the heck I am. All right. Talked about Officer Lambert. When Officer Lambert, when he wasn't an officer, when he was a little boy, about 7, he was making a boat for his brother's birthday present. And he got a piece of copper, and he was going to cut the ends off and make the smokestack. Cool. It was a blasting cap. So, blew off his hand. So he was a one-handed officer. He had a plastic prosthesis, and nothing stopped him. He was a black belt in jiu-jitsu, judo. He was just amazing. This is him in front of his house on, it's been a while since I worked here, 9th Street, I think. Somewhere around there. No, that's 9th Street, yeah. We actually have his pistol. He was an expert marksman. He was the top shooter of the department, like with reloads and everything. I don't know. One of his family members told about a time there was a bar fight downtown, and he gets down there by himself, breaks it up, separates these guys, and he arrests these guys. And they said, well, why aren't you arresting those guys? He says, I can't arrest them, those are my cousins. A different time. I went up and talked to his daughter in Paradise, or his daughter, or granddaughter in Paradise, And she told me about a time when he was out to dinner down on 20th Street with his wife over by, was it Durham Dayton over there? Or, yeah. And he comes out, and here's an officer struggling with this guy. So he helps him throw him in the police car, and the guy says, "These are burglars." And the other one's down beneath the bridge. He goes, "Oh, okay, hang on." He didn't have a gun. He just goes down there and thumps up the guy a little bit and drags him up and throws him in the police car. Tough guy. Smart. Anyway. We're coming to a close here. What time is it? How are we doing?
10:53. Yeah.
We're okay? 10:53. All right. I want to talk about some of the treasures. Remember when I said I went over to Carolyn's office and I asked for the stuff that I lost? Or misplaced, or whatever you want to call it? And she said, "Oh, you're here for the books." Somebody brought in these gigantic tailor books. And it used to be that they would have swatches, clothing swatches. You could go in to buy a suit and you could say, "I like this material." Well, when the year was over and that model of clothing was over, they'd rip it out and then they'd put in, oh, come on, man. They'd put in their bolos. Some pictures in a little bit. It was supposed to be like, "Here's these bolos," and you're like, "Wow, that's great." But didn't do it. Let's talk really quickly about interesting arrests. No, you know what? Forget it. I can poke a button. Look at that. All right, here they are. Interesting bolos. And they would stick in their bolos for people that are arrested. Actually, some of those bolos are in that display that you all have put together in there. Oh, I'm sorry. Be on the lookout. I'll give you an example over here. So, Chico is the city of what? Roses. I didn't know that either until I got into this. Look up at the top. I can't zoom in that much, but yeah, the city of roses. I thought Roseville was. Chico was. Who knew? So, this is a bolo for, let's see if I ended up putting, yep. This fella shot a fella. He's got a black and stubby mustache. He doesn't have a beard. He has a long and sallow face, and he's stout. He entered the home of R.L. Boggs. And when Boggs got up to see what he wanted, this man shot Boggs 2 times. And Boggs died an hour later. So they're looking for this guy. That's a bolo. Be on the lookout. And they're going to send this out to all the police agencies in the local area. And in turn, we're going to put in our big old book, all the other bolos. This man may have cuts on his face as he jumped through a window after the shooting. So look for that guy. I don't know if he got caught, but... Has a bike ever been stolen in Chico?
G&J chain.
1950. And we have them from like the 1800s. People just want to steal people's bikes. They still do. For heaven's sakes, there's Facebook pages now about people stealing people's bikes in Chico. All right, this is a ticket. Okay, I'm going to tell you the offense. The person is speeding. Okay? Who wants to read that? Bill, you want to read that?
I don't have my glasses.
You don't have your glasses? All right. So, the guy makes an illegal U-turn. The officer lights him up, puts on the big gumball machine, right? He's steadily blowing the siren and followed him at a speed of about 65 miles an hour to 9th Street. And from 9th Street, he gained speed to about 75 miles per hour. I could see that he was not going to stop. So rammed his rear bumper, causing his car to go into a spin. Can we do that? Is that in the policy today? No?
This violation.
He gets out and he's like, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I thought I could outrun the Buick." Different times. Yeah, what would happen if somebody did that, one of your officers did that today? Yeah, they're going to get arrested, right? I love this story. I don't know why. Maybe it's the sick black humor, but it's funny. This is an old police report. Are you ready? This is from the 50s, I think. I received a call from the desk to go to 274 Ivy Street, where there was a man who had come to a house there saying that there was someone after him. When I arrived there, I found this man. He was very much worked up over the fact that he had been attacked by some men, and they had fired several round at him with a machine gun. And after he had dodged the shots for a while and became scared, they would kill him. Because, you know, after a while of being shot at by a machine gun, you start to get worried. He then dove headlong into a fence and knocked down the fence and a number of trees that were growing along the fence. He wanted us to give him a gun, and he would go back and kill the, quote, son of a bitch, excuse my French, close quote. He then started telling us about walking into a place, some place where a man had looked at him and turned and jumped out of a window, whereupon a woman there pulled a gun and threatened to shoot him. He knocked her down and out of a door, and then he ran for his life. This man was brought to the station where Officer Lucas and I listened to his story and locked the man up for drunken investigation. I don't know how many times maybe you're in a call and you're like, no, nobody would believe this. No, it's impossible that somebody would believe this. Yes, sir.
When this building was a library in the 60s, I rode my bike back and forth to work. I came over here to return a book one day and walked back out, my bike was gone.
Did you get your bike back?
Nope.
Was this a Carnegie library?
Yeah.
Very cool. What kind of bike was it?
Stolen.
A stolen one. What year was that?
Well, I came back in the 60s. I worked for Ron Ward. Actually, he did a lot of the work on this building. But
Hadn't changed, huh? Nice. All right. I'm going to go back and show you a couple of funny laws and we'll be done.
one of the names that was notorious at Chico High School in the 50s was Bashan. He was a motorcycle cop here in town. He used to be out by the high school whenever we were coming and going, and the rest of us were mufflers.
What was the name? Bashan?
Bashan, yeah.
Did you have a loud muffler? No, you didn't have, yeah. Didn't have a bike. Yeah. That's awesome. One of the gentlemen I spoke with once said he used to take his dad's car when he was 12 and go for a drive, but he'd see one of the officers and he'd go the other way. Well, one day he shows up to the store where the officer and his dad are, and they're laughing because the officer knew the whole time the kid had been driving around. Just kind of let him up. Yes, sir.
I just got a story that I heard regarding the municipal building. It's the police substation now, but at one time it was the building department, and I was doing some work on it, and I heard a story that a prisoner was in the jail down there, and it was a hot day, and he put a towel under the door, jammed up the toilet, and half filled the cell with water.
So he made himself a nice little pool in his jail cell.
That's true, but...
Wow. All right. So sprinkling. What this was at the cleaners, they would spit on your clothes, and instead of like spraying it, don't be sprinkling. That was a common back in the 1800s. Vulgar language. Bunch of potty mouths. Street walking. I don't know what that is. And this is from the 1800s. This is from the early Marshall records, like the 1870s. Street, like walking around on the street. I don't know. Prostitution. I don't know. You guys are so cynical. I would just assume it's somebody walking, but violating the slaughtering ordinance. Fast riding. 7 miles an hour on your horse. You're in trouble. Smoking opium. Keeping an opium den. I think you have examples of pipes, right?
Yeah.
Opium pipes. Sleeping in boxcars. Don't do that. Insanity. What's really funny is that in the early or late 1870s, the marshal they had to actually order the marshal to stop taking people to the municipal building that were sick. They had like infectious diseases and stuff. Just knock it off. But that's what they do. They take them and they'd go get people for medical reasons, all sorts of stuff. Different time. Drunk and fighting the officer. That didn't ever happen. Drunk and insulting ladies. Don't do that. Running over a fire hose. Okay, this is a cop firefighter thing, ready? The very first Chico fire station next to the municipal building, it burned down. So, I enjoyed that, I don't know why. But, visiting a house of ill fame. Lighthouse, right? Or one of the many, right? Bring it back, right? I have no idea what that one is. But, we had fun trying to date pictures, and actually Ted McKinnon was the lieutenant at the time. He came up with this. He was looking at this picture, and there was nothing on the back, so he actually... Oh, I got to tap that part. Look over the right of his head.
1355?
Yep. I could tell one time. I don't remember when it was, but I got it in the book somewhere. Yeah, it's in the 50s. But yeah, you look up close with a magnifying glass and you can find all sorts of clues. It's detective work. And it was really fun. So this is a great picture of retired Chief C.E. Tovey, Lee Baxter, right here, Howard Geyer, who became a lieutenant, and investigated marijuana crimes. Got a great article of him holding a joint like it's all like hermetically sealed and hazmat suit, and Chief Jim Evans. So, thank you. Stay safe. I'm sure if anybody has questions, that's fine. I dedicated this book to the City of Roses, to Chico, which has been a great town to my family, and to those who have worn a badge to protect her. All the money, just so you know, all the money that goes from buying those books goes to the police department so that they can preserve the documents. So I really appreciate that. Anything you can do. There's fun things up here to look at. Don't get handsy too much. Some of the stuff was taken during crimes, and other stuff was stuff that was used, and we can talk about it. But there's some great stuff. So I'll turn it back over to David.
That was just great. I wanted to share with you this that Jim also brought in here, and I found this of special interest here. Another just curious and incredible little story here from Chico. Just recently, within the last 6 months, Jennifer Wood, our new museum director, and I put together this little exhibit right back here on Roy Miller, who was a very prominent Chico personality, born in the early part of the 20th century. By the time he was in his 30s, in about 1935, he got into the grocery business and would build up quite an empire of grocery stores all over Northern California. And Miller was supposedly one of the first to really bring in the self-serve style of going into a store. Instead of going into the grocery store and giving the grocer your want list, and then he'd go out, or his clerk would go, Roy had a store where you walked around with a shopping basket and filled up your basket with what you wanted. So this was really interesting to see this actual note here, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's interesting. Dear Roy Miller, this no doubt will be a surprise to you, but you are to place $15,000 in $5, $10, and $20 bills in a box, take a motorcycle, leave Chico at 11:45 p.m. Tuesday on the Humboldt Road. Don't ride over 25 miles. And you wait until you see a white flag on the right side of the road, and that's where you're supposed to leave the money. So it goes on here, and it talks about what's going to happen. Let's see. don't dodge this issue, and it will mean that your family and home will be blown to hell. And that's the same one. But anyway, Roy Miller, you will make sure our I don't know what this is, but anyway, yeah, your family. If you don't get this right, we're going to wait until they're all there in the house, and then we're going to blow the house up. Don't be a damn fool. Down here at the bottom. So again, Jim has got the little, somewhere the little note that the police chief, I believe, was the one who really solved this and brought a good end to it there.
Yeah.
But again, just an incredible batch of stuff from our own community's past there. It's quite striking to see how times have changed.
Yeah, I love the second letter that he got said, "You were a damn fool."
Thank you